Hi, I'm Kelly, and I'm here with Karyn, and we're here to answer your grief questions. If you like our content, make sure that you subscribe so you can stay up to date on all of our latest videos. We release new videos every Wednesday and Saturday. And make sure you check out our older content because we've got a lot of videos out there. And we are now in the holiday season, so we are continuing to talk about what it's like to be grieving during the holidays. And so today's question is for Karyn, and it is, how do I handle holiday cards, both sending and receiving?
Yeah, we talked about this, and I think this is a good question because it's probably not something people think about until like the moment that they're either sitting down to write their cards or that first card comes in the mail. It's like, oh my gosh, I've got this to think about too. People are very focused on decorations, very focused on the get-togethers, but these are like those little things that do have a lot of tradition attached to them for some, but all of a sudden can feel very, very different. So we talked about the sending and the receiving. So I guess to talk about the sending first, couple of things. One, you don't have to send them this year. That's entirely up to you whether you feel up to sitting down and doing that. I would imagine a lot of people don't. I know when I lost my stepdad, that first year I didn't do any cards, just didn't do it. I wasn't in the spirit of it. I wasn't in the mindset of it, just didn't feel. And frankly, I've kind of scaled back ever since then. It's interesting how things sort of change, and they can sort of stay that way. But so you don't have to do it. Maybe if you are doing it, you do it on a smaller scale. Or even if you're just giving a card that's like an accompanying a gift, you kind of wonder how to do that. I know another part of this is how to sign the card. Like let's say you're talking about, in a couple, and again, like my mom has chosen to continue to put my stepdad's name on the cards. I love it. I really like it. It's a-okay with me. How the rest of my family feels about it, I'm not sure, but I think it's kind of neat. And actually, he was a painter at the end of his life, and he actually made little cards. So the cards we get are his paintings.
Oh, I
So
love that.
I
Oh,
know. I keep
so
all of them.
continuing bonds, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So it's like a nice, really special thing, to have. So there's that part of it that just happens to be sort of personal, to our family, that we're able to do it that way. But it's that very like, what do you want to do? And you can go out and buy a pack of cards, sit down and see if you can get through them or not. They don't have to have the same messages that you're used to about happy, happy, happy. It could just be very calm, maybe kind of blank inside where you just, send someone love, whatever it may be. Um, I guess the other part of this is the receiving of cards. And people will also maybe wonder how to address the cards, and having them come in without your loved one's name could be very difficult and very triggering. You may decide that you don't really want to open the cards, and that's okay too. You can sort of put them aside. I know people even do that sometimes in the midst of memorial services and things like that. They just don't feel up to doing that. So I suppose we give this advice a lot, but it is very personal. And I guess it's just a matter of knowing that you don't have to follow the same rules of what you've always done. People either understand or they don't, but there just may be things that you're just not up to.
Well, and I love what we talked about, prior to us recording, kind of about, how do we handle sending cards to people that we know that are grieving?
Mm,
And you said you usually choose like a peace card, right? And
yeah.
one that's maybe not so like holly jolly, right? Because the reality is the holidays are difficult for a lot of people, not just grieving people. And there's family estrangement, there's all types of grief that really can come up from the holidays. And sometimes the holidays can be some triggering reminders of things. And so I do think, a more basic, like simple card that has a peace message or something like that probably is a better thing to send out overall to people,
Right.
because you don't know how people are going to respond. And I know for me, I've always like been really careful when I know somebody's grieving not to send like a happy Merry Christmas, best year ever, because I know for them going into the new year probably is hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be the first year on the calendar that their loved one wasn't a part of, and how hard that can be. And I remember a few years ago, I made one because I couldn't find any cards that I felt were like
Oh, it's
appropriate
nice.
for grief. And I like made one on Canva and printed it. And, because I wanted just like a simple winter scene. I didn't want some like, really happy scene, because I know it probably wasn't an easy holiday season for that family.
Yeah.
And there's some people out there, some other grief counselors we know that have holiday cards that you can buy, and I think they're nice. Just have a peaceful holiday. I hope your holiday is gentle. Saying things like that, if you're sending it out, could be nice. So I do think this video could be people that could be benefit people who know grieving individuals what to do,
Yeah.
but also handling those hot cards. It's hard to sometimes maybe get those updates. I don't know if any of your family members do these, where they do the long letter and they talk about all the amazing things their family members did.
Yeah.
And then you're grieving and you're like, well, this is awful.
Right. Yeah.
I
not
didn't
doing
get
any of that.
all of this year. And then one of my clients, she actually, a family member, like a distant family member, that was their opening paragraph, was about her husband dying.
Okay. Different
And
approach.
she was so triggered by that.
Yeah.
And like also upset, because she's like, I think I should have had some warning that they were going to talk about my family in their card, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And I'm like, well, I think they were just wanting to acknowledge and kind of, acknowledge your grief, and that they're missing them just like you are. And but those things can definitely be triggering. So I think you have to think, is coming back to the simple question, which we've talked about in many videos, is this going to help or hurt?
Mm-hmm.
Is sending out cards going to help or hurt, or opening the cards going to help or hurt?
Yeah, that's very true.
Maybe you put them to the side and you wait until you feel like you're in a good spot to be able to open them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. If nothing else, usually with the cards, you can see who they came from and you get the idea.
Exactly. Which one's going to have the family letter and which one.
Right. And it's like, all right, this person was thinking of me, this person, that's lovely. Like maybe that's as much as I need to know, is that who was reaching out in general. Do you think any of this also sort of translates in, I guess speaking to the people who know grieving people, or if we're able to express to others what would be helpful to us, but the way we text or the way we greet each other. So like I've been doing a lot of calls this week with people that I won't talk to now until after the holiday, and so I find myself being mindful of that, and telling them I hope they have a restful holiday, a peaceful holiday. Like, do you think that this can kind of translate in how we text or talk to each other too?
Yeah, I think it should, right? I
Yeah.
think, if we had a more grief literate society, we'd be more mindful of the things that we're saying to our,
Right.
to people that we know are grieving. I mean, I do the same thing. Mine's always like, I hope that Thanksgiving is gentle and calm and peaceful for you,
Yeah.
and because like we've talked about, Thanksgiving can trigger all sorts of emotions, right? And the questions of how do you feel gratitude, and so I think it's just about being mindful about how we do say these things, like, oh, hope you have a happy new year, the best yet. And like one of my clients was like, my daughter is not going to live in that year, so how is that going to be the best year? Or even saying something like, I hope next year's better for you. I've heard a lot of that in
Yeah.
some of the cards. And the reality is their grief is going to follow them into the new year. It's not necessarily going to be any easier.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And, as we've talked about, I think there's a lot of good intention behind it, or people just not really knowing any better. But all of this, it's interesting, even though we're talking about like cards and kind of in the written form, which anymore is probably the least way that we communicate with people, but it's all still about communication, how we are sending it, how we are receiving it, what we're putting out there, and then what we're getting back. So, the rules aren't terribly different. It's just this very specific thing that, and let's face it, we're talking about holiday cards, but it probably is the case for birthday cards and things like that too, that people are, reminded of also.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So to sum up the question, Karyn, what would you say to people how do you handle holiday cards, both receiving and sending?
Well, I guess, again, just the fact that it's going to be a very personal decision. Do you have the energy to do it? Number one, to sit down with your list. Do you modify that list and only do it to people that you're closest to? Do you do it at all with the sending? how do you sign it? If you lost a spouse, what feels right? You may find you write it out like, I don't like that, either with or without, and you do another one. This is going to be a lot of trial and error, especially if it's your first year. In terms of the receiving, it's your choice whether you want to open those or not, and what you do with the cards themselves. Like, it's just, it's what we say. It's, you kind of have to feel it along and see how you do as it comes.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Karyn.
Thanks, Kelly.
And thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more episodes every Wednesday and Saturday. Take care.